Welcome to part 4 of our live training session here with our 2004 Honda Civic Si. In this training module, we're going to be exploring dialing in our part throttle cruise tuning. So we're going to look at how to dial the fuel in, how to dial the spark timing, the variable cam control, so we have a very well-tuned part throttle conditions that gives us good economy and good throttle response. We have a lot of things to cover here. Let's jump into our tutorial. Welcome back to our live training session here with our K24 swapped EP3 Civic. Now in this tutorial, we're going to focus on how to dial in our part throttle cruise area of operation. We have to do a few things to the calibration file to prep it to go into part throttle cruise. So let's go and review where we're at here, and we'll talk about what we need to modify in the variable cam timing table. So we have, in the last tutorial, gotten the engine to fire up, hold its own idle. We know it can start and do that consistently. We rev it, comes back into idle, holds in idle. So we're ready now to drive it off of idle. In our VE table, what we're going to focus on in this tutorial is dialing in our VE values here from approximately -4 all the way down to full engine vacuum. Now here on the dyno, I can't get to something like -12, -13, -15 PSI of engine vacuum. We're probably going to be only really getting between -4 and roughly maybe -12 here. This area right here is the overrun deceleration range where you lift off throttle as you're coming back into an idle. The engine will pull the highest vacuum, and you'll find you'll be transitioning into that area here. So unfortunately, I can't hit those specific areas, but what we can do is look at the pattern or the trend as we're shaping up and calibrating our table here, kind of in this band of operations, so -4 to -12 here. Whatever we find for V values, we can carry through and extrapolate downwards here into our other 3 rows, and then I have to go and test this off the dyno and actually drive it to see if I need to alter or change our values in here. So that's going to be one of the focus of the tutorial here. This map is prepped, it's ready to go. We don't really need to do anything with this right now. The values that are in here are reasonable values. Now, let's move in here to our spark timing table. In our spark timing table, we have purposely left the spark timing here roughly 20 degrees off of idle. So here is our idle area, 500 to 1250. 2000 in our RPM and up is going to be where we are in our part throttle cruise. I've purposely left the spark timing here extremely conservative so that we can dial in our fuel and airflow model first and then come back into the spark timing. 20 degrees is a reasonable amount of spark timing that we can still get reasonable drivability and torque output from the engine, but it is definitely less than where we should be at. We should probably be anywhere between 30 to 40 degrees depending on what specific load or throttle input we're giving to the engine. We're going to take a look, the very last thing in the tutorial, of going in here and actually shaping this table and seeing the live torque output here on our mainline chassis dyno, and then following the process by bumping the timing in and figuring out where we should be at. And if you don't have a chassis dyno, there's going to be some steps I can give you to follow to also dial in your spark timing. But what we'll find here is that these values that we've placed in here at 20 degree are good starting points. Now, let's talk about 2 other factors that we need to consider here for doing our part throttle cruise tuning. First thing I want to talk about here is our variable cam control. Now we've zeroed out the variable cam control table. We've done this so that we didn't have to worry about that being a factor or a variable when we were firing off our engine. Now that we're going to start to drive our engine, we need to have some values populated in the table, and it needs to be very specific. Now I'm using OEM camshafts here on my engine. Even if you have aftermarket cams, let's say you have Brian Crower or Drag Cartel, whatever cams you're using, it's still going to command a similar profile in variable cam within the part throttle area of operation. So we're going to look here from -4 to -12, and we're going to specifically look off idle here. So we're not going to populate anything in the variable cam table. We don't want to do any overlap at idle conditions or off idle. That'll create drivability and idle problems. So here we're going to leave this at 0. 2000 RPM, we're going to start to introduce some variable cam movement. What I'm going to do is set my values here at approximately 15 degrees. Then from 2500 all the way to 6000, I'll set this to 30 degrees right here. And then from 7000 to 8000, we'll just taper it back again. Now this is a generic profile to the variable cam timing, but what we'll find here is that in part throttle conditions, we generally want to park our variable cam roughly at 30 degrees. We can see that right here. So 2500 to 6000, this is going to be the most RPM range, or the highest RPM range we're going to be covering during our part throttle cruise driving, and that's where we want to lock our cam in at 30. So by inducing some overlap there, 30 degrees is kind of the sweet spot. It gives us a compromise between economy and throttle response and engine torque output. So we want to make sure that we're following our variable cam target to 30 degrees. Now, if you have a 25 degree VTC gear in your engine, you would place 25 as the highest value in here. I have a 50 degree VTC gear, so you have to be mindful of that when you're programming and targeting your target in your table here. So we can see we're just setting this up in this kind of transitory type of situation here. Negative 2 PSI, we'll actually zero this out. We're gonna go through the part throttle tuning process here. Thanks for checking out our teaser clip. If you want to see the rest of this video and more than 500 hours of current EFI training we have to offer, make sure you click right here. If you want to go and check out more teaser clips from this training course, click here, and you don't want to miss any of the videos we're going to be releasing on this channel, so make sure you subscribe and click here. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you guys later.